All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Friday. It is April. Nope, it is May 2nd, not April, May 2nd. On your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, presented by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. Today, a little bit smaller of an episode for everybody. Get you into the weekend. And we'll just go ahead and talk a little bit of Texas baseball. Now, we don't have the score to the game on Thursday night for Texas or for baseball or softball. Unfortunately, we are recording this episode ahead of time. We got some conflicting scheduling issues in terms of getting these episodes out to have a reaction from Thursday's game. But anyway, we're giving you a little bit of something. Something's better than nothing, right? So we'll talk a little bit about Texas baseball leading into this episode, and then following the remainder of the episode, some football talk, some spring talk, a little bit. We'll kind of just wrap up draft talk. I don't think we'll talk too much draft after this episode, but just the impact of what Steve Sarkisian has done with this program and the draft, more so that angle on it. And then, we'll get you out of here pretty quickly and some spring ball updates. And we'll go into the weekend positive and hopefully at this point, hoping to take down a series in Fayetteville, Arkansas after winning game 1. Fingers crossed on that. This is just, again, a pre-recorded episode for you people on a Friday afternoon. Jake, how are you doing, man?
Hopefully on Friday, doing great at this time. Have watched Texas win a baseball game, have watched the Stars close out a series, and just rolling in high to the weekend. I'm sure nothing could ruin that. Friday, Jacob is hopefully just doing perfectly swell.
Yeah.
And having
Tuesday night, Jacob is doing really well ahead of what could be a very depressed reality Jacob on Friday, but
Jacob very happy.
We won't get to see depressed Jake on Friday if things don't turn out the way we want them to in the sports world with the Stars and the Longhorns.
Could see a very depressed Jake next week. I mean, we don't know what the future holds yet, but hopefully it holds happiness because this past weekend was a lot of fun with Texas sweeping A&M. The Stars rebounding after a tough game 4 loss to throttling the Avs in game 5. Texas softball obviously losing was disappointing, but hard to be too upset whenever baseball sweeps A&M and having good stuff going on and our other teams that we care about.
Jake, let's go ahead and speaking of baseball, 5 seems to be that magic number. To clinch.
Could be less.
It could be less by now. At this point, where this is the time of recording, could be 4. 4 could be the magic number. Say Texas does win, it's 4 is the magic number. Texas loses to Arkansas, 5 remains that magic number for today. But that is the number of wins that it'll take for Texas to clinch the SEC regular season championship.
And with the magic number, with how that works, LSU losing, Arkansas losing. Those are the 2 teams that are both 14-7, the only 2 teams that can compete to win the SEC title for the regular season. And so, if LSU drops some games, that number can shrink even if they lose a game because of it being Arkansas this weekend, but they have 3 series left. With a magic number of 5, and that number can shrink even if they drop it. If they drop a game to Florida, but Arkansas and LSU lose a game, that number can go down.
Right.
So Texas sitting in about as good of a spot as we could have ever dreamed of, past what we could have ever dreamed of, with 9 games to go, sitting at 19-2. All they need to do at minimum, at worst case scenario, to win the SEC regular season title is go 5-4 in those 9 games with a very winnable series against Florida. And then a tough series on the road at OU. I hopefully might be going to a game or 2 of that series as well. But still, I mean, 2 of these last 3 series are really tough. Florida also just took down Arkansas, so no slouch there, even though they're lower on the standings. As we know, that doesn't particularly matter in the SEC.
No.
And so, but still, if you told me that win 5 out of the last 9 to win an SEC title, A, I would have laughed in your face at the start of the season. B, I would have taken it in a heartbeat.
Yes, 100%. But yeah, and that's another good point to make, Jake, that I don't know if my brain had calculated yet. It's a little slower than most, but when it comes to the other teams losing within the standings of the LSUs or the Tennessees or the Arkansas,
Just LSU and Arkansas.
yeah. So just those teams losing games within this 5-game, 9-game stretch that we need. It may be less time to even get that, with Texas not even winning all 5 games to actually clinch at that point. But hopefully Texas just wins 5 straight from here on out. We don't have to worry about it. We can say we're regular season champions heading into the SEC tournament, trying to get as healthy as possible. I think that right now is my biggest number one concern, is can we just get as healthy as we possibly can? Maybe not even in time for the SEC championship tournament, but at least getting into regionals.
I care much more, just like with basketball, I care much more about a regular season title. Ideally not splitting it, to say that right away. I think the 5 is the magic number to win it outright. Could be 4 as of time of recording. Depends on Thursday's results. But yeah, that regular season title means a lot more than the SEC tournament to me, because you're comparing a sample size of an entire conference season to a bunch of best of ones.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that to me, that regular season title is what you're going for. And then hopefully in the SEC tournament, if anything, you could rest some guys that are banged up at all and just do as little risk taking as you can. If you already have a regional and a super regional spot locked up, obviously they're still going to go for the win. If guys are healthy, you play them. But if you got some guys who are banged up and we're worried about having any chance of re-injuring, if you win that regular season title, you might have a chance to kind of rest them a little bit.
Without a doubt. Jake, let's go ahead and put a bow on the NFL draft talk. But I thought this was an interesting stat that we have not yet brought up yet. And, maybe a lot of our Longhorn listeners have already known this stat. We had it down on the dock earlier this week. We just never really got to it as a talking point. But Texas has now had a player drafted at every single offensive and defensive position in the Steve Sarkisian era already. Jake, what does this mean for the current state of the program, and also the future of this program?
I just thought of this, and I wish I would have thought of this before and gone back and looked. I wonder if after the Mac Brown era, if you took Charlie Strong and Tom Herman and combined them, if they even combined to do that.
No.
And I think the answer is no.
I think the answer is no.
Fairly confident the answer is no, but it could be wrong. But because it is just to be drafted, but still. And when you consider the amount of high picks too that Sarkisian has had from a pretty wide variety of spots. Right now they're kind of RBU as well. They have the longest active streak of having a running back drafted, also by far the most included during that streak.
That's more impressive to me, is having the 5 running backs taken instead of the 2 or 3 from the previous or the other teams on that list.
And guess what? There's more that are going to be taken. I wouldn't be surprised if Wisner was a late round pick. CJ Baxter still has all the potential to be a draft pick.
He might be second round, third round if he has a good season.
Christian Clark. He, from all reports I've seen, he could be Jared Gibbs. I mean, they got 4 or 5 guys on the roster right now, not even talking about the extremely talented freshmen they brought in who could all be drafted as well. It is just insane what Sarkisian has done at Texas. They had the 3rd most players drafted out of any team in college football this year. Guess who the 2 teams were ahead of them? Georgia, Ohio State. The 2 teams Texas lost to, which that gives you a pretty good idea of Sarkisian has been really good about beating, the competition that's even or below. But obviously at times has not beaten that team that might be a step above. Alabama would be the biggest argument. But you don't get many of those opportunities when you are a top 3 to 4 program in the country. Those will come. But I think every Longhorn fan, every rational Longhorn fan doesn't take for granted what Sarkisian has done with this program. And that stat to me is the antithesis of it, because it shows the consistency on both sides of the ball at every position group development. And that's what Sarkisian tweeted out. He posted out on X, the everything app, everything happens on X, was #development. And to have that word linked with the Texas Longhorn program after a decade of suck feels pretty good.
Yeah, the word that was attached to the Texas program for a better part of a decade was suck, underdeveloped, falling flat, all of those.
Joke.
Yeah, a joke of a program, disappointment, depressing, you name it. That was attached to it. But yeah,
Chokers.
Jake, I think this is such a powerful recruiting tool of just you can use so many guys as examples, getting in more talent. And I'm not talking just out of high school, recruiting in the transfer portal. It's where the college game is today. And if you have a weak transfer portal, you're probably not going to be able to fill some of those holes in your roster come springtime and going into the summer workout program. And so what Sark has done in terms of the draft success, saying, hey, look, X amount of guys over the last 2 years have made it to the NFL, and we have the most amount of running backs that have made it to the NFL by a wide margin than any other program in the country. And it's just been one of those things where you can just constantly kind of point to each spot on the roster and say, you want to go to the NFL? Well, we've got a guy over the last 2 to 3 years that have made it to the NFL from that position.
Yeah, like you said, Texas already has every recruiting tool in the arsenal, but this is just another one to add in there, because when you can say something like that pretty much not many other programs other than a Georgia, other than an Ohio State can say, it's pretty powerful when you're recruiting against still some really good programs, but that's something you can say that maybe a Tennessee can't, that no, you can't right now under Venables, that an Ole Miss can't say, is look at what we're doing. Look at what we did with the Matthew Golden. Look at what we did with an Andrew Makuba. Even the guys it helps in the transfer portal. You just look at the guys that they brought in as transfers. All of them who have trusted the system, had the right work ethic, had the right traits, have all increased their draft stock dramatically. Who would have guessed Matthew Golden being a first-round pick after last season? Nobody.
Nobody had
the
him.
Answer.
Yeah.
Even when he committed to Texas, no one was like, "Oh, this is a potential first-round guy they got." He was the footnote behind Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond didn't work out for an assortment of reasons, but when you have a Matthew Golden workout, it kind of shows that maybe the issue wasn't the program. It was something with the player, or just injuries in Bond's case as well, to be fair. And then obviously there's some off the field stuff that goes with Bond that's come up recently. But Texas football recruiting is only going to get better, which is a little crazy to say when they just had the #1 recruiting class in the country. But I was reading an article on 3 from a national reporter. The portal's just taking over my mind.
That's what reporters that solely just get news from the portal should be called, reportals.
Yes, reportals.
I like it.
But they were saying that, Texas looks poised to make another run for #1 in recruiting. I don't think back-to-back #1 classes has happened in the history of Texas football. So maybe something to look out for. Still very early. I don't think that really means much, but still it shows you that the prospects for the future of this 2026 class are very, very high.
Well, that, Jake, and even whenever we hired Sarkisian, and even when the job for Alabama came open and Sarkisian was a top, one of Nick Saban's #1 people to replace him at Alabama, there were many, opinions, talking heads on the national media stage of saying the closest thing that we've got to what Saban did at Alabama is what Steve Sarkisian is currently doing at Texas right now. And we just haven't had the result in terms of national championships yet. But I don't think that there's a soul out there that's a college football fan within the world of college football, whether it be a Josh Pate that has sources and talks to coaches on a regular basis, reporters, the guys like that, scouts that don't think that Texas isn't primed to go on a run of winning not just one national championship within the next 5 years, but multiple national championships within a 10-year frame of consistently being there. As long as Steve Sarkisian and this program is running the way it's running, it's going to get to a point where it just starts running itself, and it's going to be the likes of a Georgia and Alabama, a Clemson back in the day with Dabo, and what looks like possibly right now in Ohio State. So, yeah, it. If you're still buying stock, Texas's stock hasn't flatlined yet. It still has a long way to go up.
Yeah, and as with stocks, that doesn't mean every year is going to be perfect. It doesn't mean every year they're going to have a national championship level team. But I would be buying Texas stock still at this point for sure. And you know, I know some people might jump out at what you first said with being the closest thing to what Alabama. But in terms of what you said, it's not saying that Georgia isn't that, but I think a lot of people forget it took Kirby 6 or 7 years to win a national title at Georgia. They've still only won 2 under him. I say only, but when you're talking in terms of Nick Saban, 2 is a drop in the bucket. And so it's not saying Texas is to that point yet. It's saying they're certainly trending to that point. And the turnaround that's happened at Texas is remarkable, like it was at an Alabama, at a Georgia. But even at a Georgia, it took Kirby Smart a lot of time. For a long time, he was the guy who can't win the big one. Georgia fans wanted to get rid of him.
Couldn't get past Saban. Couldn't
get
over
past
the hump.
Saban. Wasn't going to be able to win a national title. They needed to go get a bigger name, even though I don't know what bigger name that would have been, but Kirby Smart wasn't the guy. And you'll see Texas fans saying that because they've lost in the semifinals the last 2 years. You're always going to have those fans, and maybe some of the fans are listening to the show and don't agree with us, and that's fine. But it took Ryan Day time. It took Kirby Smart time. And it's only a matter of time for Texas.
Well, Ryan Day was also one of the can't win the big one guys. So,
has he won the big one though? Because he did lose to Michigan.
He did lose to Michigan, and that is the big one for Ohio State and Michigan, not the national championship.
Yeah, their fans changed their tune real quick after the saying, we lost to Michigan. The season means nothing, even if we win a national title, to the Michigan game meant nothing because they won national title, which is the correct order. But the meltdown after the Michigan game, that ended real quick.
I'm not gonna lie. I probably would have felt some type of way if the results for the Texas A&M game went differently. I would have felt differently going into the playoffs than I had at that moment. So, Jake, what are some names, some guys that you are seeing pop up in some of these reports from the various Texas insiders? In terms of spring practices and training camp at this point in the season, in terms of guys that are kind of starting to rise to the cream of the crop, if you will, in terms of the scouting reports and what some of these practices are looking like.
Yeah, I mean, we could kind of go on this subject, quite frankly, but I'm just going to kind of hit some notes on what I've read from what was the final scrimmage for Texas, where I think Sarkisian and the coaching staff put a little extra oomph into the practice as far as like, this is a game, we're competing, there's a score, and Wingo was a full participant. One of the biggest notes to me, just him being a full participant is a really big deal because he didn't participate in pretty much any of the spring. And Wingo was one of the first names mentioned, ironically enough. Wingo caught a long touchdown pass from Manning, apparently was just all over the field making plays. And so, yeah, Wingo and Arch seem to have a really good connection. I think Wingo's health might be one of the most important players on the entire roster, right there with an Arch Manning, because he is wide receiver 1. And there is no doubt about that. And so he needs to stay healthy this year. Kind of, I guess I'll hit on some of the other big names real quick, and then I had a talking point kind of wanted to discuss real quick. But the other names, these aren't going to surprise you. When it came to the final scrimmage, all the big names stood out because they're the guys who kind of been not playing as much during the spring because they don't need to. Anthony Hill had a big game. Colin Simmons, Michael Taff, Wingo and Arch both had a really good game. from what I've read, it was a very close competitive scrimmage, with the defense actually edging it out over the offense. And it seemed like there was their fair share of scrimmages and practices where the offense would win a very close practice, or the defense. To me, that probably reads pretty well to the offense. But I did find it interesting reading that the offensive line against the defensive line was a bit of a zero-sum matchup for much of this spring. Now, from the edge perspective, you had guys getting sacks because Texas probably has the best edge group in the entire country. But part of me, and granted, biased, but part of me would have liked to hear that the interior offensive line was winning on a somewhat consistent basis. And granted, these are just reports, so we're not watching it. We don't know. But I don't think the defensive tackle group is as good as it has been in years past. Now, granted, those were where we were reading the defensive line was whooping the offensive line. But hearing is a bit of a zero sum. It just continues my curiosity if I'm ready to get to week 1 and see this offensive line play, so I can either calm my worries or start to look at a panic button really quick, way too quick, because it's going to be one way or the other, because that offensive line is going to get tested right off the bat in a really tough road environment. But I'm kind of glad that happens game 1, because we're going to find out a lot about, is the offensive line ready right away, or is it going to take some time in the pressure cooker for them to get going?
Yeah, well, we've also got, a ton of transfers coming in that are upperclassmen on that defensive tackle position, whether it, and so a heavy dose of new, big, strong, bodies, of big human beings in the middle of that defensive line. They're going to test that offensive line, an unbattle tested offensive line, if you will. I mean, a lot of these guys are brand new, with the exception of DJ Campbell. Everybody else is new on that offensive line. And so there's going to be some growing pains. I'd rather you go through the growing pains now in April, May, going into the summer workout program, and then getting ready to go and putting it all together come week 1 against Ohio State and Columbus. And so I'm perfectly fine with it right now. Again, those transfers, they've got years and real game reps under their belts. This offensive line does not have that, aside from one player on this offensive line.
Yeah, Cole Hudson as well, granted not at center, but still, he does have a lot of game experience.
And, you want to talk about Gooseby. Yeah, he did start in the SEC championship game, made a good outing.
Kind of an underrated aspect, honestly, for being an offensive line that lacks experience. You do have 2 guys that have a decent amount of playing time under their belts. Hudson more so than Gooseby, but Gooseby getting those reps is going to be really valuable, especially the situation he was put in College Station when Banks went down. But yeah, I am excited to see this. I'm very interested to see how Neto looks at left guard, because I've been excited about him for years. I was saying he was going to beat out Hayden Connor like every year, and was wrong every year. But I'm excited to see how he looks. I know I've read nothing but great things about DJ Campbell taking a next step. Very curious to see left guard and right tackle. To me, left tackle, center, and right guard are my. I do not have hardly any concerns, if any at all, there. Left guard and right tackle to me are the big question marks, because that's where the true just no experience comes in, and likely Brandon Baker at right tackle. And then I think almost assuredly Neto, not going to try the last name again, at left guard.
All right, well, Jake, that's going to do it for today's episode. Let's go ahead and wrap the show up and get everybody into their weekend. Again, Texas will play game 2, both in baseball and softball. Baseball taking on Arkansas, softball taking on Kentucky for their final regular season series before SEC tournament play gets going in the softball ranks. And baseball will be in Fayetteville again later on today. So tune in, and we will continue to give you daily Texas Longhorn news right here on All In Horns. Monday through Friday, we drop these episodes at noon, and this has been your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns. That's Jake Jimerson. I'm Tanner Carlson, and as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.